Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number if you want to give us a call, and Leanne is looking after the programme as usual. It's the most beautiful morning right around the Premier County. Coming up on the show this morning, Ballingarry native Patrick Walton has been crowned this year's overall Macra Mr Personality, and we will chat to him in just a few moments' time. Deputy Seamus Healy says the government is failing children with additional needs. This week marks 40 years since the explosion at Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. We will hear from Adi Roche on the lasting impact of the disaster. And Dr. Conor Reidy has been looking back through the 1926 census records from Ferryhouse Industrial School outside of Clonmel. We'll also be discussing shingles, the recent assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and our Agony Aunt Phil Prendergast will join us too. And indeed we will hear about a special talk that will honour the women who played a vital role in the fight for Irish independence. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers. The Irish Times, the lead story there. Mary Carolan is telling us that Sean McGovern sat impassively in the Special Criminal Court as he was described as a senior lieutenant in Ireland of the Kinahan organised crime group, and evidence was heard yesterday of McGovern's role during the deadly feud which erupted in 2014 between the Kinahan gang and the rival Hutch organised crime gang. Also reading on the Irish Times today that the National Lottery wants the government to stop bookmakers taking bets on its draws, arguing it's being undermined and losing out on some €289 million in annual sales to the Irish Independent. And it's dominated by a photograph of the US President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania, greeting Britain's King Charles and Queen Camilla for afternoon tea, don't you know, on the south lawn of the White House. The lead story on the Indo today, a controversial register of Airbnb units and other short-term properties may not be in place before the busy summer tourism season amid tensions in the coalition over the planned new laws. The Irish Examiner, and the lead story on the Examiner, a delay of at least another 2 years in completing the Ireland-France interconnector is set to compound rapidly rising electricity prices in a further blow to hard-pressed householders. Also reading on the Examiner today that the government is to begin withdrawing accommodation from 16,000 Ukrainian refugees in August as it prepares to end key supports ahead of an EU voluntary return scheme. So let's look at what's making headlines on some of your newspapers today. I beg your pardon. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail as well, because it's a very important story as well, and one that will annoy the hell out of you too. More than 2,500 rooms at the €2.2 billion National Children's Hospital have not been completed yet. Can you believe this? The Health Minister, Jennifer Carroll McNeill, has said only around half of the more than 5,700 rooms developer BAM is required to deliver have been finished to contractual standards. I mean, this is an absolute disgrace. And because it's become a bit of a joke lately, we're sort of looking at it as that. But that is a national disgrace. Absolute waste. Do you want to make comment on any of those headlines? 083 311 3311. Now, on a much lighter note, Ballingarry native Patrick Walton claimed this year's overall Macra Mr Personality title following a highly competitive weekend in Kilkenny, with South's Tipperary's Aidan O'Loughlin also representing strongly among the national finalists. But anyway, the annual festival brings together Macra members from across Ireland, celebrating personality, talent and a strong sense of community spirit. And I'm delighted to say that Patrick Walton joins me now. Patrick, good morning to you.
Come on, friend, how are you keeping?
I'm very well indeed, and many congratulations to you, Patrick. Can I ask you a little bit about Macra, first of all, because you said one of your ambitions for your reign is to promote the organisation.
Yeah, so my biggest thing in Macra is, I'm trying to get out there that Macra is not just for farmers. It's for anyone between the ages of 17 and 35 to join. And then it's a brilliant organisation to join. The amount of events that we get up to, it's incredible.
And tell me, at what stage did you get involved in Macra? What age were you?
So I joined Macra in 2019 when I was 19 myself. I literally just joined it first because I seen they were playing five-a-side soccer, and it was something that I always enjoyed when I was growing up. So I got stuck into that, and I'm lucky enough in Macra, the amount of sports and activities that get involved with. So when soccer finished up, they started basketball. Then I was dragged in to play basketball, and then tag rugby started, and then we had bowling and Gaelic football. So by end of 2 years' time, I kind of got involved in all the sports. And then following on from that, they were short one person for the debating team. And I decided, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring and see what it's like. And I started debating and public speaking. And then one of the last things I did was Capers, which is it's a show written, produced and put on by our members, which it's literally a 20-minute show where you have singing, dancing, acting, comedy and a bit of everything.
Well, it sounds fantastic, and why wouldn't people get involved, particularly, of course, in rural Ireland? And from a social point of view, I guess you make great friends along the way, Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. When I joined Macra originally, I didn't know anyone really in the Callan area. I'm from Ballingarry myself, and then once I joined it, I think I have friends, from all over Callan and from Mr Personality itself from all over Ireland. There's 25 of us entered the competition, and by the time the Friday evening came, I think I was friends with most of them. It's I don't think there's anywhere else you can get the opportunity to make as many friends, especially in the countryside.
Well, that's for sure. Tell me about the competition then, the Mr Personality competition. How did you get roped into this?
So every region or county has a county night where they pick one person to represent their region or county for it. So ours was on in the Orchard House Hotel in Kilkenny. So I went in, I was just going in for a social night. There was a few pints, bit of karaoke, so I was going in to enjoy my night. I had no interest in entering it. So I rocked on in, and when it came to the interviews, it turns out the lads filled out a form on my behalf and set me up for an interview. So I had no clue what was down on the form, and so I did the interview away, worked away. They were lucky enough, Josephine O'Neill, the Macra president, was there on the night doing MC, so she got me up, started talking, and by the end of the interview, she kind of just stopped me and kind of says, all of my answers, none of them matched exactly what was on the form I handed out. Yeah. So I was kind of oh God, what did the lads wrote down? So one of them was, I think it's something that I'm allergic to. And in my head, I'm kind of I'm not allergic to anything. And it turns out the lads threw down I was allergic to baby Guinnesses.
With friends like that, Patrick, who needs enemies? That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you obviously covered it very well, and you had a bit of crack around it too. When did you know then you were moving on up where the competition was concerned?
It was on the night itself, so at the titles night, the winner is announced. So that was 4 or 5 weeks before the actual competition itself. I kind of knew I was going for it, and I kind of once I got it, it's kind of sure, I might as well tip along and have a good weekend, enjoying myself, because I seen a few of the lads in our club went for it, and they said it was one of the best weekends they've ever had in their life. So I was after hearing that, I was looking forward to the weekend in itself.
I'm sure you were indeed. So tell me about the weekend then, and what you had to do.
Yeah, so the weekend started off as we all just met up in Langton's Hotel. That's where the festival was on for the weekend. We kind of met up and we went to a tour of the Smiddicks just to kind of get to know each other. Then after that, we came back to the hotel, got chatting to each other, had a bit of dinner, met the judges, and then we had on-stage interviews that night. So we were lucky enough, we had Andrew DePuyer as our MC, and he interviewed us on stage, and if you wanted to do a talent, you got to do a talent. And then
and you sang a song. Is that where you sang Mr. Brightside? Was it at that point?
Yeah. It's kind of. I was in two minds about doing the talent all along, and then 2 weeks out from it, I decided, sure, go on, let's do it. And in my head, it's kind of what song do I actually know? And Mr. Brightside seems to be my karaoke song, so I was why not do that on stage?
And a great crowd pleaser as well. I presume everybody sang along, all your mates.
Oh, it was brilliant. I think I started the first line, and after that the crowd took over. So I was like, I can relax. They don't have to hear me singing anymore.
That's great. And did they ask you questions, or did you put stuff forward? How does that work in the interview?
Yeah, so we filled out a form beforehand, which had some general questions like our hobbies, what we've done in Macra, interesting stuff about us, and embarrassing moments. And then Andrew had that sheet on stage, and he either went down through the sheet, or if he had a random question in his head, he just asked. So I think with me, the golf was currently on, and me and Andrew were kind of big into the golf.
Yeah.
So we got up to the golf on stage, and we decided to see the results. So we went through that for a few minutes.
Well, it sounds great, and you were well able to wing it. Obviously, tell me. Can you tell me about one of the embarrassing moments?
Oh, I think the embarrassing moment I put down was, so my sister, she dropped her car into the garage in the morning, and so I came home, and it was either I go out to the farm and feed calves, or I go in and collect the car out of the garage. So straight away I was going in to collect the car out of the garage. I went in to collect it, and when I was going to get the keys, your one behind the desk asked, "Oh, are you Anya's husband?" in to collect her car, and I was kind of like, "No, I'm actually her brother." That was down as my embarrassing moment.
Well done, you indeed. So what about winning then? I mean, and to win that, what did it? Well, let's begin with, was it a huge surprise when you heard you won?
Oh, I was shocked. Like, on the night we had Caitlin Cummins, the Rose of Tree and Dancing with the Stars champion, announcing the winner, and she kind of announced it like as Kilkenny has never officially won the festival. So she was there saying about, for the first time ever, this region has won. In my head, I literally stood there for a second, and I started going through the different counties thinking, what county has not won? And then I seen her look at me, then it clicked, oh shit, Kilkenny has never won. It's like, oh, I'm after winning it. Like, that was honestly the first moment, because out of the 25 of us, any of the 25 could have win. Like, I've never met such a nice group of lads in my life.
It's great. So a bit of a shock for you. Then, what does it mean to you to win? I mean, you have a year now, and I presume you'll have to attend certain events as Mr. Personality and all of that. Is that the way it works?
So, like, what it meant to me was, I was honestly shocked, because when I joined Macra originally, I was the kind of person that stood in the corner, kept my head down. I just did not want anyone talking to me, and I kind of preferred to keep to myself.
Yeah.
And it kind of showed how much Macra has developed me. Like, if you told me 6 years ago I'd be on radio stations doing an interview, I kind of would have told you that would never happen.
Yes.
And it just shows my development. And after winning it myself, my biggest thing is I kind of want to just start going around to the different regions and different places, and just basically talk to people exactly what Macra is. And because a lot of people don't know what Macra is, and I just want them to know what it is, learn. It's not just for farmers, it's for anyone to join, and it's brilliant. There's something in Macra for everyone, and that's what I want to show people.
You see, I'm old enough to go back and remember very fondly the days of the field evenings that Macra used to run. All those, they were marvellous in parishes. You know, there would be a dance at the end of the evening. There were all sorts of games and exhibitions and stuff. They were fantastic. Did you hear much about those over the years?
I did hear about them, because I'm lucky enough, like, because my parents, they both met in Macra. So it goes back that far.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think the mother was in Care and the father was in Schlieve-na-Mon, so they kind of met each other that way. So that's how we're familiar with Macra at home ourselves.
Yeah. Well,
I have heard about the different field days and all the different events they get on, and some of them are starting to come back.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, and I think biggest thing in Kilkenny is we used to hold a barn dance every year, so we're trying to get that back up and running again, just as a social activity.
Well, it's all great. You're working in Dublin, I think, Patrick, are you?
Yeah, currently up here now on site. I kind of had to disappear off site for a few minutes for the interview.
Well, we're delighted you could talk to us this morning. What did you win? What was the prize, by the way?
So the prize was, first of all, is the honour of winning it.
Yeah.
I ended up winning the Mr. Personality trophy and a small plaque at the end of it. So I get to keep the plaque and I hand back the trophy next year to next year's winner. And I think there was €500 and a hotel, or a night stay in Langton's Hotel along with winning it, which I didn't even know was there.
Right, very good indeed. And is there a partner? Is there somebody in your life?
Nope. No, I'm still single.
I'll tell you now. So single and available.
Yeah.
Well, look, somebody could do far worse than having Mr. Personality at home, that's for sure. Patrick, real pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we can talk to you during your year of reign as well. But look after yourself, and thanks for coming on with us, Patrick. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye to you now. That's Patrick Walton there, who is Mr. Personality from Ballingarry. And as you can hear there, he certainly has a great old personality, mighty bit of crack as well. We'll take a break. It's 9:20. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, hook on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, hook on. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, the government is failing children with additional needs in their delays in addressing waiting times, according to South Tipperary Deputy Seamus Healy, who told the Dáil that more than 20,000 children with additional needs are on waiting lists for assessments of need nationwide. And Deputy Seamus Healy joins me now. Good morning to you, Seamus.
Good morning, friend. Good morning to your listeners.
Good to talk to you today. You've said that the majority have been waiting over 2 years, Seamus, and the government is breaking the law every hour of every single day.
That's correct, Stan, friend. The current situation is that over 20,000 children are waiting for assessment of needs. Now, under the 2005 Disability Act, those children are entitled to an assessment within 6 months of referral. And that situation has been broken now for many number of years. I recall first raising this in the Dáil myself back in 2017, 8 or 9 years ago. And unfortunately, the response of the government, simply hasn't been good enough. Has been much too little and much too late. And at that stage, of course, the waiting list was considerably less than the current situation. And if it were tackled at that stage, then we certainly wouldn't have the situation that has developed since. We now have a situation where over 20,000 are on that list. And even with the excellent work done by Cara Darmody from Mar Finnan, who you've had on your programme on numerous occasions, even with the excellent work that Cara did, extracting about 20 million euros for additional needs assessment, the waiting list has continued to increase and is now even higher than when Cara started her campaign. This feeds back into serious difficulties for families. Normally, the scenario develops that, at about 6 months of age, a mother, and it's usually a mother, notices something that they're not entirely happy about. Maybe by 12 months, they're becoming a little bit worried. But at about 18 months, then they're satisfied that there's something needs to be looked at. And then the worry, the frustration, the stress begins because families have to absolutely fight for everything. First of all, there's the assessment of needs. You're on a waiting list for well over 2 years. You may be forced to go privately for assessment, which is considerably costly. When you get your assessment of needs, then you have to look for the various therapies, whether it be speech and language therapy or occupational therapy, psychology or physiotherapy, and you find again that there are huge waiting lists there. There's something like 40,000 on waiting lists for those services. That's the hurdle. The next hurdle then is to get an appropriate school place for your child. Many families find that they don't know from one end of the month or year to the other whether their child would have a place.
Huge uncertainty. I presume the government would say to you on this that they're working within extraordinary constraints on this, that the legal limits, they're targets that they might strive towards, but, resources, systemic limitations. Recruitment is a huge issue for the government, is it not, Seamus?
Yeah, well, you see, that's all very fine, Fran, but we're talking after the event. As I said earlier, if this situation had been tackled when it was first brought to light, and as I said, I raised it myself back in 2017, and since then numerous deputies have raised it over the years. And there was a complete lack of acceptance that there was a problem, and there was a complete lack of planning for dealing with that problem. Now, recruitment is a problem, but again, as I say, if that had been tackled at the time, then we should have increased the places at third level for the various.
Sure, but I suppose we are where we are at this point, and I mean that announcement of inclusive special classes, for example, Seamus.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Fran, nobody that I'm aware of in this whole special education sector are happy with that proposal. It will create more problems than it will solve. Inclusive Ireland and As I Am, who are involved in this area to very substantial and significant effects, are very worried about what will happen in relation to that, and they have actually called for this whole proposal to be paused because there was no consultation with parents, with families, with organisations, or indeed with the education sector itself in relation to that proposal, and there are very serious worries and concerns about it.
But is it not a shift towards, mainstreaming children with additional needs and in some way integration there? And isn't that very important?
Well, integration is absolutely important, Fran, but what you need is a situation where there's adequate resources in relation to all this, and that announcement was made without any additional resources, either financial or teaching or special needs assistance resources being put in place
They told us there was some financial. Was there not financial resources for the schools involved, Seamus? Was that 30,000 or something like that, wasn't there?
There's anything. Very little financial resources were put in place, and they're totally inadequate, and no proposals at all for additional teachers or special education teachers or special needs assistants. And in that scenario, you can only foresee serious difficulties in relation to that. The government needs to sit down, the department needs to sit down with the various stakeholders involved in this and go through it in detail, have the consultation, have the information, and then decide on whether this is a good idea or not. As I said, there are very serious worries about it.
I beg your pardon for talking over you, Seamus. Didn't Minister Moynihan tell you, though, that he meets on a weekly basis with parents and patrons and advocacy groups and all of that? So he is making an attempt, I guess, to meet with these people.
Well, it's acknowledged by all the organisations that there was no consultation in relation to this particular proposal. It came out of the blue for organisations like Inclusion Ireland and As I Am, and there was no consultations on the proposal with parents either, nor with school authorities, as far as I'm aware. So it's a sort of a knee-jerk reaction to a situation that should have been tackled a long, long time ago. And I mean, what we do need currently is certainly additional places at third level for all the various disciplines and specialties that are required, like physiotherapists, speech and language therapy, psychology, occupational therapy. And there also needs to be an international recruitment campaign to bring in people with those disciplines from outside Ireland.
Yeah, that's interesting, because Cara Darmody told me that, I mean, that's something she was pushing for big time, but there seems to be a complete delay on that recruitment and any kind of a recruitment campaign around this.
Absolutely, Fran, and this is the point I'm making. There seems to be no acceptance, and not just today, but for years, there seems to be no acceptance of the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with, and therefore there's a lack of planning in relation to it. I mean, for instance, we require this year, we're told, 600 additional special needs classes in the country. They've provided for 430 of those. Now, I mean, the whole planning, the department and the government were aware of the need for those classes, and yes, they fall short by a significant number. So, it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, that there's been a lack of attitude, I suppose, in relation to recruitment, and there does need to be the dual situation of additional places at third level and a proper recruitment campaign, both locally and internationally, to bring in specialists in the various areas that are needed. Anything short of that is going to create a bigger problem into the future.
But in the meantime, will we still have the same conversation come September in terms of school places and the like? Will there be any improvement at all on last year, do you think?
Probably not is the answer, Fran, because as I said to you, we're already short. We know we're already short of 170 classes, so that means that there are going to be hundreds of children without a school place by September. You'll end up with some parents having to go to the High Court to get a school place. You'll end up with other parents who have their children attending a special class way out of their communities. I'm aware of children travelling 25 miles for a special school place or an appropriate school place. So unfortunately, it would appear that there's no end to that, and there's no end to the frustration and the worry and the stress for parents in relation to it. I mean, as I said, there seems to be a lack of acceptance or understanding or both of the magnitude of the problem we have in relation to it. I mean, the problem we have in relation to disability and special needs is almost now equivalent to the problems we have in relation to housing and in relation to cost of living. They're probably the three biggest issues that I come across, on a daily basis: disabilities, housing, and cost of living. There doesn't, as I say, appear to be either an acceptance or an understanding of the magnitude of the problems that are involved.
Speaking of recruitment, one of our listeners wants to know: do you have any update on the consultant ophthalmology service in South Tipperary? Now, you've spoke to me about this in the past. I think you spoke to Simon Harris about this, did you?
I did, and I raised it on last week on Thursday with Simon Harris in the Dáil. I'm very worried about the situation, Fran. We're nearly 2 years without a consultant ophthalmologist now. No consultant-led clinics, no nurse-led clinics, no optometry clinics, and obviously hundreds, in fact probably 2,000 people between children who have never been seen and adults with cataracts on the waiting list now. And I'm seriously worried because I have a report that the Department of Ophthalmology at the County Clinic in Clonmel, that the offices there are being reallocated to other services. And I've raised this particular aspect of it with Simon Harris, and he's undertook to get the Minister of Health to come back to me on this issue, because I'm worried that we may end up in a situation where there's an attempt by the HSE to transfer the services out of the county altogether.
To Waterford, I guess, is it?
That is something that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not. I'm not convinced that's going to happen at the minute. But taking all the circumstances into account, I'm certainly worried that may be. In the mindset of the HSE, and as you know, friend, the mindset of the HSE from day one has been centralisation, and any opportunity that they've gotten to centralise services, away from communities, they've taken that opportunity. And as I said, it's something I've raised both with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach as recently as last Thursday with the Taoiseach, and I'm awaiting a report now from the Minister for Health on the issue.
And just before I let you go, you and I spoke around the time of the national protest, Seamus. I see the government is now set to approve 2 schemes to assist hauliers, bus operators and farmers following those protests. And the Transport Minister, Darragh O'Brien, and the Agri Minister is going to seek formal cabinet approval for those schemes. Are you across those schemes? Are you happy about what's being proposed now?
Well, look, I certainly welcome the schemes, but I mean they simply don't go far enough. The cost of diesel currently is €2. I think 199.9. That's €26 higher than before the war started. For instance, home heating oil, there's no support for home heating oil, and that has almost doubled in price, and that affects about 750,000 households in the country. So while the proposals are welcome, they certainly don't go far enough, and particularly in those areas.
And still, economists are coming out and they're warning the government, and they're saying this is kind of reckless kind of spending, and it shouldn't happen. These are the people who advise the government.
Well, the governments have been advised and advised very badly on various issues down the years and currently as well. This suggestion that these proposals are not sustainable, simply don't stand up to scrutiny. Only last week the government revised the budget surplus for this year upwards from a surplus of 5 billion up to 9 billion.
Yeah.
Last year, I think the surplus was 12.5 billion, and there's also rainy day funds of about 20 billion. So there's more than adequate monies and finances available to put a really proper set of proposals in place, and also. And I've called for this in a private member's motion, a 2-hour debate just before Christmas, for introduction of price control and also an emergency payment, for people. The current situation is that there's 320,000 families in arrears of their electricity bills, and there's 180,000 in arrears of their gas bills. There's serious pressures on families right across the country, and those families have got little or nothing out of the current proposals that Minister O'Brien is bringing to Cabinet
Seamus,
this morning.
I must leave it there, but thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you and good morning to you. And this Deputy Seamus Healy speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, it's 40 years since an explosion ripped through Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine, then part of the Soviet Union, of course, causing the world's worst nuclear disaster. Now, the explosion took place at 1:23 a.m. on the 26th of April 1986 during an aborted test procedure, blowing the reactor's roof into pieces and releasing an enormous cloud of radioactive waste into the atmosphere. To talk to me about that, I'm glad now to be joined by Adi Roche, and of course Adi, founder of Chernobyl Children International. Good morning to you, Adi.
Good morning, Fran. I'm delighted to talk to you on this very important anniversary, and I'm always keen to get my home county interview done in Tipperary, because I've never forgotten my Tipperary roots. But and thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you say, in fact, that there's a very unique connection, Adi, between the people of Tipperary, your charity, and indeed the Chernobyl accident.
Well, yes, there is indeed, because you know the president in waiting of Belarus used to come to Tipperary on rest and recuperation holidays over the years, and you know, she's living in Lithuania now, but and actually, you know, part of the difficulties that we have at the moment, Fran, in relation to our work, we have a kind of a triad of problems, really. Like, there is the war on one hand in Ukraine, and then of course we had COVID before that, and then you have the political situation then as well in Belarus, and there are a raft of sanctions imposed against Belarus internationally, and that kind of means that our challenge is that we can't get our medical teams in and out to Belarus. But luckily enough, we can manage to get in and out of Ukraine, even though it's much more dangerous there now because of the war. But I suppose if we just maybe go back in history a little tiny bit, Fran, just for your listeners, because I'm very conscious that for a lot of people, 40 years is like reading ancient history. Sure, but of course not so for the people who have the reality of living there. And like you mentioned, that it happened at 1:23 a.m., which it did, and that's a kind of that time stamp is kind of indelibly marked in our minds ever since. And on that moment, a new word entered the history of language, the history of world disasters, and you could say the history of the world itself, and that word is Chernobyl. And what happened, you know, when you mentioned that it blew the lid off the reactor after a crazy experiment went radically wrong, it threw up into the atmosphere almost 2 tons of highly radioactive material. Now that went up like 7 to 9 kilometres, expelled, shot really through the night sky, and because nature is all interconnected, like it travelled literally around the globe, and Ireland got a heavy dusting actually in the weeks following Chernobyl in May 1986, because we had very, very heavy rainfall. Yes. But the problem too is not just what was expelled and the level of damage that created between the affected regions, but also it is the fact that the same amount of radioactivity remains like a rumbling radioactive volcano inside the exploded reactor. And what brings Chernobyl back into centre stage, literally for all of the wrong reasons. I mean, it made global headlines on the day of the invasion in 2022, because unfortunately the invaders came right through Chernobyl, right through the world's most toxic radioactive environment, Chernobyl exclusion zone. They took over the nuclear reactors there and caused untold damage. And I remember being on the radio with you for one of the anniversaries, and I said to you that my fear always has been and remains that the next Chernobyl will be Chernobyl itself. And when that happened, when the war happened and they came through the exclusion zone, like that kind of saying really came back to me. Were we about to see something else unfolding? Because they re-released the radioactivity that was locked in that very toxic land. And then later on in the war, actually on Valentine's Day, they did a drone attack on the shelter which was built around the exploded reactor, called a sarcophagus. And this was to be an impregnable, cover to keep the 200 tons inside. And of course now they have rendered it useless, because so there are really strong reasons why we must remember Chernobyl, not just for the impact of it at the time, which marred the lives of like 9 million people, but it's what potential it has still got, and particularly in a war scenario. When, Fran, this is the first time in the history of modern warfare that a nuclear facility like a nuclear power station has been weaponized. And this is really a shock. And we should be hammering on the doors of our politicians and the UN and the European Union to make sure that they call this a war crime, because it's like nuclear terrorism.
And just for clarity, I mean, if there was an actual attack on what's left of the plant there, and if it was opened in some sort of a fashion through an explosion, the effect would be what exactly?
All I can say to you, Fran, is Armageddon.
Wow.
Now, I don't want to be overly... I don't want anybody to feel that that's going to happen right now, this minute. But that is the potential. We are literally a hair's breadth from that. They have compromised the sarcophagus, which took billions to build, because this has to last at least 100 years while they're trying to decide what to do with the rumbling radioactive volcano that's inside. And that's going to take a huge amount of time, effort, and finances to do that. But hopefully they will. It will not be in our lifetime, Fran. But this was to keep it safely under containment. It's called a containment building as well. Now, they've already compromised it. The holes are there. And that has rendered, the breaching of that has rendered it now pretty much useless. And that is the fear. There's a new report out that's looking at the possibility of something happening with the remaining radioactivity inside, plus the original sarcophagus the original nuclear facility that blew up. That is really, really unstable, and they are trying to find a way to dismantle it. So anything that upsets that delicate balance is a real threat. And I suppose really, Fran, what I'd love your listeners to maybe take on board about this is that, like, this is just one example for potentially what could happen in the future, is that we should say never again, not in our name. Like, for us, the anniversary is that we should see what happened in 86 as a cautionary tale, that this accident happened, and we should take heed of it to make sure that it never happens again. And what happened in Ukraine, Fran, that is most worrying is that now that it's been done once, a nuclear power station has been weaponized. Will it be done again in a future war? And that's what we have to stop in its tracks, like yesterday. And the fact that the invaders went on to take over the other largest European nuclear facility in Zaporizhia, that's another very worrying move. So what we're calling on politicians to do is to declare it like, a war crime, and that, like, basically there should be, there should be absolutely zero tolerance. And right now, these facilities in Ukraine should be declared no war zones for either side.
Even nowadays, to describe something or to declare something as a war crime, it doesn't seem to inhibit any of the sides, indeed, from breaking these international rules, Adi, which is so.
I know, I know, Fran. There is that sense that that, like, sort of our rules-based order, has been usurped by a few people. But, like, they're the only things we have between us and some kind of an Armageddon.
And are we doing enough?
The bully boys are all fight.
Sure. And are we doing? I know you're careful about involving yourself too much in politics, but are we doing enough to stop the war in Ukraine, or are we in fact fueling it in some fashion?
Yeah. Well, Fran, the only way I really could answer that is to say we neglect Ukraine at our peril. And I mean, I'm very careful in just saying that.
Yes.
I am a real believer in that that the best way to resolve a problem between us as individuals or at a societal level or inter-country level is we have to sit down, negotiate, and get to know the perceived enemy, understand what they're thinking, what their what their problems are, and that it's only through diplomacy and through mediation that you will really get a true and lasting peace. And if we look back in history, whether it's the First World War, Second World War, every war that we can name ends up around the table in negotiations. And that's why I'm hoping that that the war won't increase, or that people won't become more entrenched than they are already. And Ukraine has suffered so dreadfully. So much has been destroyed. I can't say enough about the pain in my heart I feel for what the Ukrainian people are going through right now. And I really hope that the negotiators, the people will come to the table and try and resolve this, because, there's nothing more to be gained, but just more life to be lost on all sides. These are winnerless wars, Fran. I mean, that's what breaks my heart. There's nobody wins in any of these wars, and the terrible loss of life already and the damage to the land is terrible. And coming back to Chernobyl, like, the reality for us is that, the impact of that 1986 disaster is cross-generational. We are looking at the third generation now of Chernobyl victims. And like what we're saying for the anniversary, Chernobyl was forever, and Chernobyl sadly is forever, because we cannot undo the genetics in the land, the water, the air, and in the DNA of all life. And that's what they call Chernobyl lineage. It's leaning right in to the next generation of animals, to the land itself. And that is where the source of radioactivity is now. And like in Ireland, and I think it's important to say this in the middle of what I hope, I know I've given you a gloomy story, but there is great hope, because if you were to say to me, what do you think about our world that we're in? I honestly say to you that despite all the negativity, despite all the darkness of what's going on, I believe there is more love in our world than there is hatred. And I honestly believe that, that love is the way forward, and to give hope for the future. We have love for all and hatred for none. And like we're at a bit of a crossroads, and I'm just hoping that people will come back to our compassionate selves. And like, we're saying that, I suppose in a way 40 years has passed, and yes, Chernobyl has become this kind of potent symbol, like a metaphor for catastrophe, but that's where we learn from it, because what it brought out of all of us was the good, the decent, the empathetic, the compassion, which wells up in the human heart of the people of Ireland. Like, we turned and we saw the unbearable sorrow of people that we'd never met in our lives over in Chernobyl, and we reached out to them with an umbilical cord of support and love, and that cord will never be cut. We have sent 110 million euros worth of aid to the victims and survivors. And we're saying to them that they are part of the same human family, that their suffering is also ours. And Ireland in particular has spoken with what I call a moral authority of a nation that refused to turn away. We opened our homes and our hearts. We brought in 26,500 children for rest and recuperation into Ireland. All over Tipperary was one of the first counties that responded, and we continue to dig deep for hope and also for optimism. And like Ireland has been, Fran, and I honestly really mean this, and I want to say this to all your listeners, like we have been the torturers and the legacy makers. And on this particular anniversary, when we were in Áras an Uachtaráin with our president on Friday, like the basic message to everybody that was there to say that we were sending a human solidarity message to the victims and survivors, saying to them that they are not peripheral, that they are not forgotten, that the people of Ireland will never forget them, that because we see them as being one and the same family. And despite the war and despite the geopolitical chaos, we have continued, despite everything, to deliver all of our programs. While I'm talking to you, Fran, and I hope your listeners, take consolation in this, we actually have a team of international cardiac pediatric surgeons performing life-saving surgeries on the humanitarian front line of Ukraine on small babies with a condition called Chernobyl heart. Now, this is a condition that little babies or children cannot live with, but they will die with without surgical intervention. And our surgeons have yet again, and even since the start of the war, they continue to run the gauntlet because they know this is the balance between life and death. And I think that's an extraordinary gift to be able to give to another human being. We couldn't do it without your support, Fran, without your talking to me today, and without your listeners, responding and reacting. And Irish people are just so full of compassion, and we can be so proud as a people to how we maintain our support for others less fortunate than ourselves.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Congratulations to you and your organisation for all the wonderful work. Adi, a pleasure as always. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Good morning to you. That's the wonderful Adi Roche there. 1800 938 007. News and information's coming up.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. A lot of people on to us following that chat there with Adi Roche, and many people wanting to congratulate Adi and her organisation, indeed, for all the wonderful work they've been doing over the past 40 years. Listening on to say very good insight from Deputy Seamus Healy on the stages of how a child has to go through various things from the initial diagnosis. And for us, the listeners who would have no experience and knowledge of the process, it is dreadful that these children have to go through this. Cara Darmody is a credit to her family, an inspiration, and a disability rights campaigner fighting for all of those in this outlined stages of diagnosis, it says here. Okay, so lots more coming into us today on various different topics. I'll have a glance through and bring it to you in just a little while. But right now, let's go back to the 1926 census, because we've been making reference to this over the past couple of weeks. But our good friend Dr. Conor Reidy is with me, and every so often, you see, because we know that Conor has little or nothing to do, so we set him various tasks. And Conor, how are you? Great to see you.
Oh yeah, you're a charmer, aren't you? There's definitely in between you, I'll tell you.
So we asked you to have a look at what emerged about Ferryhouse in Clonmel in terms of the census. But first of all, would you just talk to us about Ferryhouse? Was it an industrial school or was it a reformatory?
Yeah, I mean, this is the big distinction, I suppose, that it's very important to make in the carceral history of Ireland. That is the history of incarceration, because we loved putting people in institutions much more so than any country. And part of that was the industrial and reformatory school systems. Now, the reformatories were established in 1858, so they go way back, and they were intended for children who were convicted of criminal offences, usually between the ages of 12 and 16. And, you know, when you think about it, locking children up at the ages of 12 to 16, when they were... the crimes, the things, the offences for which they were locked up were so meagre. Sometimes there were survival crimes. Industrial schools were established a decade later in 1868, and these were for neglected, orphaned, abandoned children, or those in so-called moral danger. Now again, who's the arbiter, who's the judge of what moral danger is, and danger of falling into crime? So reformatories focused on rehabilitation, whereas industrial schools provided custodial care and vocational training. So, I said...
is it fair to say one was more prison-like than the other? Is
well, yes, because on paper at the beginning, yes, because... but they all became prisons in their own way, I suppose. But on paper, reformatories required a criminal conviction. And that was important, whereas industrial schools... were for those who weren't convicted of stealing a loaf of bread or doing anything wrong like that. You know, they were destitute and they were orphaned.
So Ferryhouse then, an industrial school?
So Ferryhouse, to answer your question, was indeed an industrial school. And it was founded in Clonmel. For those of us north of the I was called Hurlis, the border between north and south. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if other people agree, but anyway, I could start around there. But anyway, any of it north of that motorway. That's what we'll say. Yeah. So for those of us north of the motorway, Ferryhouse, I suppose, a few kilometres east of Clonmel, on the banks of the River Suir, built in 1884 at a cost of £10,000 by a Catholic benefactor, Count Moore. Now I'll talk about him in a minute. But it was placed in the care of the Rosminian Order, and it was given a further £1,000 to kit it out and furnish it. Now, £1,000, I don't need to say, is a huge amount of money at that point in time. So it began life as a 3-storey red brick building set on about 9 acres, and it grew, as you all know, and as people in Clonmel area know, it grew up into a much bigger complex. Now, Count Moore was Arthur John Moore, and he was a papal count, so he wasn't a count in any other sense.
Like John McCormack.
Exactly, yes, very, very much. And he was a wealthy Irish Catholic MP, landowner and philanthropist, and he was the founder of St. Joseph's Industrial School in Ferryhouse. Well, this is the thing, because sometimes you know me, I like to go into the long grass and go into the deep down microscopic detail, and this is when we're looking at the bigger pictures of these institutions, and we tend to think of the horrors that went on, and we know a lot, but we'll never know enough. We can never know enough. But sometimes we always have to look at origins of these things. Sure. They started out with the best of intentions. That's very important to remember. And why would someone like Count Moore have been interested in doing something like this? Well, remember, the other great, not so great institution of the 19th century was the workhouse. Yeah. And he and others saw these schools as an alternative to workhouses for abandoned children. And we know it later became known for systemic abuse. But that's not why someone like him founded it. Okay, we must put that where
there was good intention.
There was always good intention. Yeah. Now, the political dimension of his philanthropy is important to note. He was an enthusiastic supporter, as I said, as an alternative source of detention for children who society deemed needed to be detained. Whole other question. But you know, his motives may not have been entirely altruistic. The building was completed just in time for the 1880 general election, and he was returned to Westminster as an MP for the Home Rule Party. Okay. So, you know, no good deed goes unrewarded in that sense, you know. So that's kind of a skeleton of the origins of Ferryhouse, where it comes from. And as I say, not defending anything that came later, but insofar as social thought was developed at that point in time and political policy was developed at that point in time, where the acceptance and the norm was seen to be that children could and should be incarcerated for, usually it's a faultless incarceration, detention on their part.
And we're talking about young boys here.
Boys and girls. Now, it was boys in Ferryhouse, but it was both, both genders.
In the case of Ferryhouse,
yes, absolutely.
It was young boys. Right.
So we you know, one of the most, we touched off sources when I was on the Friday panel with you last Friday, historical sources in Ireland, but one of our most important historical sources now for all the industrial schools is the Ryan Report into institutional abuse, and that was published in 2009. And the initial licence for Ferryhouse was 150 children. So when it started in 1884, 1884-85, the initial licence was for 150 children to be looked after there. And the Ryan Report then, through the next subsequent century and a half, really, or a century, really, I suppose, The numbers hold steady: 155 in 1900, 154 in 1910, 127 in 1920. By 1930, and we're in the Free State, 193.
Wow.
Free State Ireland in particular liked to detain people, liked to, saw it as a need, saw it as a great need of the state, of government, to detain people for some reason. So
in asylums, in prisons, in industrial school.
The lunatic asylums were there since, as they were known, since the 19th century, and they continued full flourish in the Free State years. The Magdalen laundries, then same thing. Really, really big noise in the 20th century. We have heard a lot about the mother and baby homes. They just turned from county homes into mother and baby homes, and the industrial and reformatory schools. Now, by numbers, they reached their peak, I think, around 1908. I saw a figure for that, I think, the industrial schools. But still, they were a key point. They were a key kind of plank, if you like, of the whole juvenile detention system in the 20th century, despite the existence and the efforts of the prison system to continue with the Borstal project, which is my wheelhouse, I suppose. Yes. That started in 1906 in Clonmel and continued right up until 2015 at St. Patrick's at Mountjoy, St. Patrick's Institution at Mountjoy. But that never took off because it was underfunded, and it wasn't for children. It was for 16 to 21-year-olds. So our obsession with detaining vulnerable people was very real, and is now going to be revealed to us much more as time goes on through the census. Just exactly how.
And that brings us to the census of 1926 then. And of course, it covered Ferryhouse. What jumped out at you from that when you looked into who was in Ferryhouse on that night?
I suppose the thing is, they were identified, which is wonderful.
Yes,
all their names are there. There were. I have a pile of figures in front of me, and I don't have the overall total. But there were. Well, I think it was 137 or something like that. Boys at Ferryhouse that night. Now, what I love about it is the silence around these places and the kind of anonymity of who was put there. And we almost have this vision, I suppose, of terrified blank faces who were given numbers rather than names. Yeah. And I think for the first time ever, the 1926 census gives children detained by the Free State their names and identities back. So it documents
every young lad
every young lad in there on that night.
And I guess the Rosmanian
the staff themselves. There were 8 residents, 8 adults aged between 27 and 82 there that night.
Right, and were they priests?
And some of them would have been priests. Some of them were lay. One of them was a brother, and he was the head, Brother John Joseph, I think it was Brown. Yeah. What I've printed out here is very, very small, and it's 40. He's aged 47. He's recorded as the head. So, and he's a priest.
Right, so he will be the principal,
I guess, principal of the whole place.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, this shaking off of anonymity.
Yeah.
Is very important, I find, I believe, and I feel, because we finally have all of these people who we now judge to have been wrongly detained, unfairly detained, detained under a very, very flawed kind of social policy, and tormented, many of them, throughout their time there. But they finally have names. They're not just statistics, and I love that.
Does it tell you where they're from as well?
Yeah, it does. I mean,
so are they from all over the country?
That's where it gets really interesting. Yeah. Ferryhouse was Clonmel, so you expect, well, this is going to be serving Tipperary, and it does. For the highest number of boys there that night was 39.
From Tipperary?
From Tipperary. Sorry, from Tipperary, 30 from Waterford.
Yes.
Now, that's not a surprise,
Of course,
obviously.
on the border
and
there,
25 from Kilkenny.
Right.
Also
and again
not a
on the border,
surprise. 6 from Wexford, 2 from Dublin, 2 from Cork and Carlow each. You know, it's interesting how that happens. We don't know. Then 1 each from Clare, Limerick, Kilkenny, and Clare, Limerick, Kerry, and Kildare.
And does it give you information as to why they were there? Is that
no?
Okay.
But then we go back, because I brought a couple of samples here this morning, printed from the census, and now I don't think you can see that there, but see that column right there with the green line through it, that one.
Okay. No, I can't.
You can't see it. Well, what that says for most of the boys is mother dead.
Ah, right.
So,
yes, and that would have been common as well, because I was telling you that I had relations there. 2 granduncles of mine were there.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, you couldn't find them, so they weren't there
not that
at
month,
that particular
that
time.
night, yeah.
But I know in or around that time
Sure.
they were there. And again, the same reason their mother would have been dead, and the father wouldn't have been capable of looking after them.
But when we come off air, you're going to give me more details on them, because they will show up on a census somewhere.
I suppose.
You know, so and I thought of that only after we last spoke on it. So we're going to.
I know as a historian, you must be like me. I'm so annoyed I didn't speak to them about it, and I wish I just had knowledge about it at the time, and I could have spoken.
I know,
because what a trove of information it would have been.
We do this all the time. We do that. I have lost a couple of uncles. My uncle Mick, who passed away, Mick Reidy in Rosemount in Carrigator, and he passed away in 1997. And I suppose I hadn't gone down the road of my historical career yet, but I was still interested in history, and I and many others among us wasted a great opportunity by letting that man go without having the chat with him. My uncle Matt passed away in 2021. Now, people did talk to him. Not me, of course, because no, you're always too busy doing other things, aren't you? Which is ridiculous. But I know people did interview him for the Ara Historical Journal out in Newtown, Portrue and Ballywilliam. So, and that was... that's what we should be doing much more of. What we have to realise, Fran, is we can all be our own oral historian. Oral history is a growing part of there is an Oral History Society of Ireland, for example, and I'm friends and former colleagues with many of the founders. And it is you don't have to have the letters before or after your name. You don't have to have anything. You can be your own oral historian today with the older folks in your life.
And nowadays, with technology, record them.
Record them. Maybe I'll come on someday and just we'll have a little talk about how people can actually effectively do their own oral history. Not that, because there are little guidelines I can offer just right off the bat that maybe we can do a piece on it here and let people go away. Really, I'd implore people to do that with the older folks in your life right now.
And that's why I always say the Eamon O'Dwyer's programme Down Your Way is the greatest resource, and has been over the last 25 years. I mean, incredible. Just for that, hearing people's stories from years ago.
Because that's going to be archived, and that's going to be there forever.
Absolutely.
And,
it's marvellous.
Leanne has been doing some archival stuff here with you, getting voices
She's obsessed
from
with
the past.
it as well, which is great.
That has been, you see the response you get to it.
Huge.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Did we learn anything else about those boys then, except where they're from, their age?
Their age.
Was there any other information?
Well, their age 6 to 16 in Ferryhouse that night. 6 is on the lower end of the age register, mind you.
Yeah.
Two of the boys that night were 6 years of age. 2 6-year-olds. Imagine that when you think about it. How frightening must that have been?
Sure
when you think about it, you know. But there were 5 who were 7, so that's only a couple of months older than 6, isn't it? So 5 were 8. 8 were aged 9. 19 boys were aged 10. 19 were aged 11. 25 were aged 12. 23 were aged 13. 23 aged 14. 19 boys aged 15, and 1 was aged 16. So he was on his way out the door at that point.
My God.
But when you think of the little small ones,
and
really,
many of them, I would imagine, were grieving because, as you say, one of the reasons that they were put in there was because they had lost.
Well, a former colleague of mine, Sarah Ann Buckley, who's a professor of history now at Galway, University of Galway, has her thesis, and her first book was, I believe the title is The Cruelty Man. So you had the cruelty man who went around and
every child, I remember myself, you were threatened with the cruelty man.
There you go, yeah. You know.
Yeah.
And that was very real.
Yeah.
And in fact, for some children, the threat came to pass, and they ended up in places like this because the cruelty man in cahoots, they say if they made the decision, or the priest made the decision in situ in the community, that maybe the mother had died now and the father couldn't look after the kids, so many of them were going in, and we've heard all of this before, but now for the first time in the Free State, we have, we can go in and look at, and those boys have names, and the girls, because I'm looking at Ferryhouse, which is male today, but the boys and girls, these children have names and identities and faces.
Did you find it moving when you went through it? Did you?
The thing that gets me is when you see in the census entry, mother is dead.
Yeah.
Under the long list of the one you have that neither. Oh no, I have it here. That neither,
and as you say,
neither of us can see. Yeah. That mother is dead, and you see that. And I saw that in my own original Borstal research. When you'd have a boy put into Borstal because he was a criminal, they would have all had a criminal conviction. Yeah. And.
You have names like, Thomas Ryan, Andrew Morrissey, Thomas Jordan, Thomas Brown, Victor May, John Hill, Patrick Callahan, but these are all kids. These are all little children.
Well, that's why it is moving, because they're little children whose lives, as they knew them, out in the world, like all of us who've been fortunate to grow up in a conventional home. And most of us are. I know that's not the same for everyone, so I don't want to assume. But there's those of us sitting in this room, and others, didn't have our lives interrupted by being taken away by a stern-looking man or woman, or two stern-looking men or women, by being taken away, taken to a cold, industrial-looking building with not much in the way of emotional light, and our lives grim places, and our lives upheavaled for years to come, and maybe any connections with the past for some of these children would have been eliminated.
Now, I see as well, it appears that many of the kids, or at least some of them, were brothers as well, because I see like Andrew Rowe, John Rowe, I see William Donnelly, Edward Donnelly, so obviously brothers.
So multiple children taken from the same household because of... And if one had the time, and maybe one will have the time, find the time, because this is important to uncover. If I was to go back in some other records now and look and see, where you have multiple of children who are in there and their siblings, was there a documented death of a parent of that name? And there's ways to find out that.
That's interesting, yeah. So you could chase it all back.
You could chase it backwards to see, can you find a reason why there's two children of the same name in there? And it could be that the mother or the father or both parents were deceased. Or it could have come to court where they were seen as neglectful parents, of course. And again, even that neglectful parents thing has a lot of question marks over it.
There's many, what appears to be brothers. I mean, Patrick Logan is there, David Logan is there. I see Patrick Power is there, William Power is there, and So
none of that is an accident, really. Do you know what I mean? So whereas the census gives us very skeletal information, on the surface we might think it gives us much skeletal information about what can be gleaned immediately from the documents themselves. What it does is it opens a lot of doors for social investigation, for further social and historical investigation.
For sure, and it might, and even our conversation, hopefully today, will inspire people not to let relatives die away before you hear their story.
Well, that's why I'm going to come back on this with you, Fran, again. We'll do it another time. And let's look at people, and I don't want to be coming across as pompous and come on as, the historian telling people, how to do oral history. No, I can just give people a few handy pointers.
Absolutely.
I needed them.
We'd love to do so, because the listener was saying it would be amazing to have further discussion on oral history. We as a family always forget not asking our elderly relatives their insight and their experiences and their history. And
great.
That sums it
Watch
up,
this space and we'll do it, because I didn't do it myself, which is ridiculous. You probably didn't do it, and we all live to regret it. And now more than ever, we have the scope and we have the ability to record voices and everything and faces in ways we haven't been able to do before.
Excuse. Listener says, my daughter came across the entry for the night of the census 1926 it was called at the time the Lunatic Asylum in Clonmel. There were over 800 between inmates and staff. What a horrible name on the place. Thank God we moved on from that kind of language, and indeed from those.
When I have used that on Tipperary's Hidden History, Fran, I've always put the proviso on it that the lunatic is, because I feel a responsibility and a duty here when I am using it on that, and I'm usually using it in the 19th century context. And I always put the proviso, as your listener says, I didn't call it that. That's the name that was put on them. And it's a terrible, and thank God, as your listener says, we have moved on from it. But remember, if you got deeper into the lunatic asylum, how are people registered? Idiots, imbeciles, things like this. And none of them were idiots or imbeciles in the insulting way we might call someone an idiot today.
No, they may have been autistic. They may have, had special needs and something.
People with epilepsy were put into these places, Fran.
But also people who were just a little eccentric.
That could be any of us.
Well, we'd certainly be.
We'd qualify, Fran. We would. They'd put us in the same wing. And
Conor, I hope we can talk in more depth about the asylums.
Let's
as well,
do this. Absolutely. There's a lot to say. But I would encourage people, go to the census, dig around. You meet, in genealogy especially, that branch of history, we meet brick walls all the time. Sure. Try not to let the brick walls, try to get yourself over them.
Great to see you as always, Conor. Thanks very much indeed for that. Thank you. We'll take a break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, in his first court appearance, the man accused of opening fire outside the White House Correspondents' Association dinner was charged with attempting to assassinate President Donald Trump. The 31-year-old California teacher and engineer Cole Thomas Allen believed it was his duty to target Donald Trump's administration officials, according to a note that he left for family members minutes before the attack. But a gentleman who's been contributing to the programme over a long period of time, Liam Mounsey, he's not sure about all of this, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Liam.
Good morning, Fran, and good morning to your listeners.
And
may I start, first of all, by taking a few things out of the way before we talk on that. I was travelling down yesterday towards Roscrea when you mentioned something about an iPass letter or email that was coming into you.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
And I'm very saddened to think that then people had to write a letter to your show that we, the people of Ireland, are not looking after these people in better. It's scandalous.
Yeah, they describe their circumstances as inhumane yesterday.
Absolutely. Coincidentally, I happened to pull up outside Racket Hall to take a phone call. Somebody phoned me, but I won't answer when I'm driving, so I pulled in case there was an emergency. Yeah. And I counted in excess of 40 non-Irish cars there. And I goes, oh my God, that could be a positive thing. And then I happened to come home and look up that there's 1,300 Ukrainian cars in this country that don't pay tax and they don't have to pay VRT. They're still registered in their own thing 3 years later. It's concerning.
Right.
And number two, you happen to have a gentleman on talking about sewage in the rivers. or damage sewage is doing to our environment. He was talking about the Carton Creek or something.
Yes, that's what Morris spoke to us. Yes.
Yes. I'm still advocating that we should be putting up more anaerobic digesters, and I still say that if by putting up anaerobic digesters, we can become self-sufficient. I really mean that, and stop people objecting to them. But more importantly, put them in the right place. That's what's important. To put them in the right place.
But they're all conversations we would have had in the past. Would you talk to me? Would you talk to me about why you came on? Which is, you have doubts over what happened in Washington. Is that right?
I have indeed, Jen. I'm very concerned that such a thing was able to take place. I wouldn't like to see anybody being shot, be it the President of America or anywhere else. I mean, that's a tragedy in itself. Yeah. But my concern is the lack of security. If you look at the videos that were shown, and some are sort of blurred out, they were clearer earlier on Saturday night, but they're blurred out since. And you see this man who you have identified there on your intro, running through the lobby, and he has what looks like a single gun in his right hand, and he's running forward, and a couple of security personnel then remove their revolvers and start aiming at him. Would that be fair enough to say that?
He actually managed to get past one of the security guys, in fact.
That's right. Yeah. Now, from what I understand, in 1981, President Reagan was shot and the same hotel on the entrance.
That's right.
So they put up a massive security, what would you call it, hallway or something, so that he would be able to exit his limousine and get into the hotel safely.
Yeah.
My concern is there was metal detectors there, and everybody had to pass through them. How did the man get through with a gun?
Well, my understanding is that he was a guest in the hotel and he had been there for a period of time. I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No. But on the entrance, it detracted away some of the conspiracy videos are coming out about different people standing in the lobby. But there wasn't actually a metal detector there. There was one lady, and she put up this thing that, I just walked through. There was no security or like that. And next thing, they shows a photograph whereby she was actually walking through the metal detector. Yeah. So she had to take down her own tweet that she had put on. But the biggest failing in the whole lot of this, and listen, whether it's President Trump or anybody, nobody deserves to be shot when they're having a private gathering like this. So I'm calling out the fella called Sean Kern. He's head of Secret Service.
Yeah.
How could somebody or anybody, regardless who they were, get that far to do what they did? Now, we're told that 6 shots or 5 shots was fired off. We don't know who actually fired them off. We know that there was one of the personnel shot on his bodysuit. Yeah. We don't know whose bullet that was. It could have been the Secret Service. It could have been anybody. But the whole point of it is security or lack of security. See, this is madness. This is 2026. I mean, honest to God, this shouldn't be allowed.
This is the third attempt.
Well, yeah, technically it's the third attempt, exactly, yeah. And there's conspiracy theories about the first one in its own right, you know, and I'm quite sure there'll be the same on this one. But that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is the lack of security. Yeah. There was people in there, President Trump and his wife, and there was other people, a lot of ladies are in there. It was scandalous. The whole thing was, oh my God!
Yeah, and if he did get into the auditorium, I mean, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, was on the stage as well, along with some of the top cabinet members. So if a guy did manage to get in there and start spraying bullets, I mean, he could have wiped out, you know,
absolutely,
a large part of the cabinet. You know?
There has to be a serious investigation, or there has to be serious heads to roll. Whatever security firm that was involved in that, they have to be disbanded straight away. They're a disaster. They're not even amateurs. They're useless.
Well, they're supposed to be the best in the world, these guys, you know. The security service around
allegedly so, but if you remember the first shooting, there was heads to roll about that as well in relation to allegedly that shooter was spotted on the roof 5-10 minutes before.
Earlier on, this is in Pennsylvania at the rally there. Yeah,
absolutely, in 2024.
Yeah.
So you learn from that. Now, I know for a fact that the roads up to the hotel were blocked 5 or 6 miles out. They were actually you couldn't get through.
Yeah.
But now you get through to the hotel. Now, the man that did the shooting, or that is alleged did the shooting, he apparently was a guest in it, but he was 2 floors up. He was able to get down 2 floors of an escalator or a stairs, whatever the case may be, he still had to face security people. If you look at some of the videos, you see these guys coming in, oh my God, total troopers coming in with guns as long as your arm, their headgear, the whole lot. Why wouldn't they in the lobby?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that personnel in the lobby instead of ordinary dressed people? I mean, the army personnel came in with their handguns on, not rifles. The army personnel came in holding hand. The whole thing was a disaster.
Yeah, I think they may have only been called in when the emergency happened. That they were called in from the outside. My understanding, that kind of SWAT team.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but why wasn't the SWAT team in the lobby?
I don't know. It was very. You're right, Liam. It was very lax, and it appeared to be very.
Yeah.
I would imagine there will be a big investigation into that. You know.
Oh my God, this is serious. This is absolutely serious. The president of the most powerful country in the world, allegedly, and this risk. I mean, that's crazy. That's just wrong. We've better security in this country. We've better security in this country in relation to our personnel of that calibre. And to think that if I go into the door at the moment, I have to get somebody to sign me in. And
Absolutely. I remember, I mean, when the American presidents come here, the last time Joe Biden came here, you know, they were out there, they were blocking manholes, they were doing all sorts of, I mean, it was really extensive security, you know.
Actually, when King Charles came over to visit Ireland at the time, I was coincidentally drawing pigs down to Mitchelstown in Cork.
Yeah.
And all the manhole covers, the roads were blocked to go side roads because the manhole covers had to be welded.
Yeah.
Manhole covers had to be welded down before his advance on them roads.
They send guys here weeks ahead of time, and they go through everything.
Absolutely. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's almost unbelievable. Now, the conspiracy guys are out there saying that the fact that he's losing the war in Iran and he's looking for what would you call media attention, because he is a narcissist in all honesty. He is a narcissist in all honesty. So he is looking for attention constantly. But I mean, this is beyond. I mean, even if the government didn't actually get the president, thank God he didn't, but they had to get J.D. Vance or some of the ladies that were there. No. We
Yeah, some of the other conspiracy theories around the building of the ballroom at the White House, and he said, you know, well, if that was to be there, you'd have better security around it than you would at a commercial hotel.
Look, that's typical of Trump to come on and spin that, and all the Republicans were spinning that as well.
Yeah.
That particular ballroom there can hold 2,600 people, where he's talking about couldn't hold 400 people. It actually has started at the moment, and he wants some judge or somebody stopped it at the moment, and he's crying out that this judge should be thrown off the bench because he stopped it. I mean, look, that secure the place that they have it. That's more important. If they weren't able to secure the lobby, they most certainly not fit for governance. And I mean the security services.
Yeah,
they're just wrong. But some of this is to do with spin. Whether it is the conspiracy theories or otherwise. I'll give you a small example in our own country. Here before the oil demonstrations, there was an awful lot of people crying out as the government are not meeting the demonstrators and things like that. And they were off, I think, for the Easter at the time, if I remember right, and that they were coming back on Tuesday. And on Monday evening, 3 of the junior TDs, I think it was Ryan O'Mara, Sean, I can't remember his name, or Fergal, and they supposedly put in a letter, basically giving out about the Taoiseach. Did you notice that every media station talked about the 3 young people put in that letter instead of talking about the Taoiseach meeting the people? All the media, including Tipp FM, and not saying anything wrong, I mean, they were right to do it. But all the concentration was on the 3 young people. But did you notice Ryan O'Mara was never brought on to answer that? And what he actually did was, well, that's the letter, I signed the bash of it, and there's no more about it, I'm not talking about it. Isn't that correct?
I was away at the time now, so I'm not sure. What was he on?
Oh, yeah, I beg your pardon. You're right. Yeah. Okay. Well. That was
James O'Connor and Albert Dolan, wasn't it? Along with Ryan O'Mara, were the signatures.
That's right. That was a stunt to take the flack off of the Taoiseach of this country.
Now you see, that's another conspiracy theory, is it not, Liam?
No. Listen, I work for a farming organisation. I know well how to put in spins. I know who to hit them at, whether it's county council or politicians. I know what language to use. I know what spin means. Spin doctoring is probably the best profession ever going in every sense of the word.
Are you saying that the 3 young Fianna Fáil TDs and that statement they issued, are you saying that was fabricated in some way, or that it was...
Oh, no. The letter was written by civil servants, and they signed the bottom of it. They did that on a Monday night.
We don't know that, Liam. We don't know that.
No, but let me finish, if you please a second. Yeah. This is the same Taoiseach that came out on allegedly on Monday night and had a meeting with them 3 people. You were away at the time. Yeah. And he allegedly had a meeting with them 3 young people. And one of the statements he made was, we have only enough jet fuel till June. I'm almost sure he said June. We've only enough jet fuel to last until June. He never said about central heating. He never said about lorry diesel. It was jet fuel. He got on a plane the following morning and went to Cyprus. These kind of ridiculous things that are going on within our own government, not among the American government. And now that we have Ryan O'Mara, I went through Clough Jordan yesterday, and I never saw such a brutal street to drive through in my whole life.
What, the surface?
I wish he'd go. The surface. We're in Clough Jordan recently. It's that car rally stuff. I wish he'd do something for the local people that actually put him into power.
Well, I'm sure he'd tell you he's doing lots for the local people. I'm sure he'd be able to list off lots that he's getting done.
Listen, I always discussed it just because I went out to the end there at that road in the Evolution and turned up to Ballycapel, and I busted the rim of going over the potholes. I'm partially thinking of putting in a bill into Tipperary County Council. The road up along there, Fanny, is absolutely scandalous. Yeah. Unreal. You
know what you're doing for me now, Liam? We will be inundated with people who are going to say, well, you think that's bad? Wait till you hear about our road, and we'll be sent in pictures every single time we talk about this.
And it's lovely to talk to you, as usual.
Well, lovely to talk to you as well. You look after yourself, Liam. Gurmil Mahagud. So that's Liam Mounsey speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. Let's take a break. Back in just a moment. Says he fiddling around with the computer here like mad.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And Leanne is with me. You're hearing a lot from listeners on various different topics this morning, Leanne.
Fran, you called it, we're inundated with roads.
I knew it. The moment Liam mentioned that. I said,
roads, potholes, curbs, anything you can imagine. Thurles is coming up hugely. And I know there's roadworks being done in the area. We got loads of letters in during the week about that junction near Semple Stadium. We are inundated. People not knowing how to use that roundabout system in the square in Thurles. We are hearing a lot about that as well.
We could do that as an item every single week for year after year, couldn't we?
Oh, absolutely. And after you explained it to me, after you did your driving insights, now I'm that biddy. I'm like, no, now that person now is in the wrong lane.
That's not the way to do that.
My granddad was driving me through town the other day and I said, no, you're in the wrong lane now. Left lane to go that way now.
No.
So,
well, you see, as my mother used to say to my late father, you see, when he'd say to her, I have the right of way, Reenie, and she'd say, yeah, that's fine, but does the other fella know that you have the right of way, you see? And that's the problem, isn't it? Even if you know the way around, it's how others behave.
Exactly. And I remember my brother was learning to drive. I told him, you're able to do it. That's fine, but it's other people you need to be worrying about right now. Because if they pull out in front of you, if they have their lights left on full blast at night, you have to be able to react. Because when I learned, that was the hardest part, was trying to deal with other people.
Of course, yeah.
Like you can manage anything. Speed limits are coming in hugely at the moment. We've a lot of complaints about very, very slow drivers in the Rossgrey area, but also very, very fast drivers.
Right.
So that's as you come down between the Templemore and Rossgrey Road, you're passing the nursing home. So it's about a 100 road before you get to the motorway to turn off for Limerick. So on the way into the town, people are complaining about extreme speeding along that straight stretch there.
The conversation with Dr. Conor Reidy as well, a lot of reactions. And one I was particularly taken with. The listener says, I was in Kilkenny School and Clonmel. I was 6 or 7 years old, and then I went to Ferryhouse at 10 years old. I was 16 at the time. My father died before I was born, 1954. My dad died 1953, 5 months before I was born. At the time, my mother had to pay 5 shillings a week. At that time, some of the stories are so sad, aren't
so
they?
Heartbreaking. And I remember whenever we cover the mother and baby homes or the industrial schools, we always get that message in being like, oh, can people move on now? The church have done what they can we move on? But how can you expect people to move on when we're constantly finding out more and more, constantly, like that? To see the names and the ages of the children involved, I know with the mother and baby homes it's something we're going to touch on later in the week, but there's so much detail around the number of children and unwed mothers that were in these facilities.
And as you say, we're learning all the time where that is a concern. Edwina was on to us, and this is following my conversation with Deputy Seamus Healy, and she said again that comment about inclusive classes leading to more integration. Doubling the size of an autism class benefits absolutely nobody, only the NCSE, that's the National Council for Special Education, isn't it? Somebody else saying, my son was refused an assessment of need as he was under the care of primary care at the time. He's been waiting since he is 4 for an autism diagnosis, as CAMS won't assess him for ADHD unless autism is ruled out. I got a letter saying he will be 12 before he gets the autism assessment, isn't that? And again, you're hearing this all
the time. And that we're hearing a lot about the issues around the public and the private system. So someone who's public waiting for an important diagnosis, it could be up to 4 years. Whereas with a private diagnosis, you could get it within a month or 2.
Right, but it's expensive.
It's expensive, and it's that idea that people can't afford to go the private route, nor should they have to. This is the public scheme, but they're not getting what they're needed. Problems being left too long. We've heard from so many older people with neuropathy and sight issues that have had to wait and wait and wait, and it gets to a point where there's no recovery for them.
All right, if anybody wants to talk to Leanne, the free phone number is 1800 938 007. Leanne, thanks very much indeed for that. News and information is on the way.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome along to the final hour of Tip Today. A listener says it's very hard not to have doubts about the attempted assassination of President Trump and government officials. How, in all honesty, could this have happened? We would have thought every guest and hotel room in the hotel would have been checked, all movement of guests, staff, etc. I don't know, but it's very hard to fathom, says one of our listeners on 083 311 3311. Now it's time for our Agony Aunt Phil Prendergast. Good morning to you, Phil.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you. I'm here in Nina. You're there in Clonmel. So we're not meeting face to face today, I'm afraid, Phil.
Fran, I'm so disappointed.
Me too. Me too, indeed. So are you all set to go, Phil?
Oh, I can say I sort of am.
Very good. All right. Letter number 1. Dear Phil, I'm writing with a knot in my stomach and a story I'm not proud of. For more years than I care to count, I've been less than straight with my wife about what I earn. Nothing wild or flashy, no secret yachts or anything of that sort, but I shaved a bit off the top. I told her it was all we had, and I tucked the rest away, quiet-like. At the time, I told myself it was a bit of prudence, a rainy day cushion, maybe even a way to keep the peace when money felt tight. Truth is, I got used to it. Now that quiet little habit has turned into something that feels a lot more like a betrayal, and it's weighing heavy on me. Here's the rub. One of our grown children has hit a rough patch and needs a hand. I can help, properly help, and I want to. But doing so means the truth is bound to come out, and I can already hear the thunder. My wife's gone without over the years, thinking we had less than we did, and I've no doubt she'll feel rightly wronged. I don't blame her one bit, but I'm stuck between wanting to do right by my child and dreading the storm I'll bring down at home. How do I come clean after all this time without blowing the roof clean off what we've built? A fool who meant well. It's signed. What are you making of that, Phil?
Oh, do you know what? I think it's quite sad, actually, that that you would operate within a confines and have more money than you actually need. Because if you're able to put money aside, it does mean that you're operating in a good way. But to keep his wife and partner out of that is, to me anyway, it's simply wrong. I do think people have a right to be able to do anything they want in terms of being, prudent and saving for the rainy day and doing all of that. But it's also very deceitful of the husband to tell her, like, you can't really afford this and you can't afford that, because it was bound to happen at some point that someone in the family might need help. And I think the best thing he can do now is actually come clean, because if she's listening, she's going to know well who this is. And, I can understand about the rough patch that somebody needs a hand as well within the family. But he does need to say that he was operating with the best of intentions, that he just needed to have a sort of a, if you like, just something additional that he could come up with if he needed additional money. But to tell the woman that he hadn't, that this was what he was earning, very unfair. And I think he needs to
in fairness to him, though, Phil, it's not as if he was spending this on himself or anything like. He was just squirreling it away.
He was, but his wife has gone over the years thinking that they had less than they did.
Yeah, and she was probably scrimping and saving, I suppose.
Well, I mean, when you have what you think is an amount to spend, you have to be very prudent in how that's done. You have to know what bills are coming and when. You need to have money set aside for that. So she was operating in that and working with it. The fact that he had this cushion that he was not telling her about is simply unfair, and I don't think it's very honest communication between spouses for that to happen. And I think it would have been better for him if he had just said, look, I was putting this money aside, I think we'll go and have a big holiday, or we'll do something, or we'll whatever, or help his adult children out, if that's what it means. But I think he's going to have a little bit of she's not going to be very happy with him.
I'd say it'll be all picture and no sound for a while, I would imagine. Even though there's a friend of mine, and she maintains that a lot of women would have their own little running away fund. I'd be a fan of that as well, actually. So it's a complete contradiction. It's just, I do think that you need to have some degree of your own money. And I think it's very fair if you just want to spend that money on yourself, or if he just wants to spend that money on himself. But generally speaking, when somebody is squirreling money away, it's for the betterment of both. And I think that's how relationships work. You have to be fair. You have to be equal. You also have to be good to yourself every so often and buy something that you want. But, I think having your own money is a real addition. Yes. Now, I'm not sure from the letter as to whether both of them have worked over the years, or what the story, what the dynamic is there, Phil. So I'm not certain.
Yeah, it just says... I just told myself it was a bit of prudence, a bit of rainy day cushion, maybe even a way to keep peace when money felt tight. So his ideas were fair, and they were fairly honest, except not telling his wife is a kind of a big red flag for me.
Okay, and are you suspicious of his motives a little?
Not really.
Not really,
Fran,
okay.
I think he was operating that he just thought, oh, well, if anything happens or pops up now, I can say to her, well, listen, I happen to have been putting away a few bob, and here it is. And I mean, I think that would right what I perceive as a kind of a wrong here, even though I don't think the intention was anything more than just he wanted to square away a bit of money.
I wonder how difficult that was. I mean, there's pay slips and there's receipts and all of these kind of things. I wonder, was it difficult?
I suppose a lot of stuff are coming by electronic transfers now.
Yeah.
And maybe the wife wasn't up to speed with going on the computer. Some people still don't like it, even though it's very normal for 5-year-olds now to do that. But, you know, this poor man, anyway, he said he was writing with a knot in his stomach and a story he's not proud of. So I think if he's been doing this for years, he must have a significant amount. And I think the best thing would be to do it, just come clean and help out the son, and then start using this and start enjoying their lives. Maybe they were operating in complete, you know, just having to be careful and having to be prudent in how they spend money and sorting out bills and unexpected bills, Fran, you know, like when the car needs a service and then they find, oh, well, it needs new tyres and we need to get, you know, and there can be a significant outcome. And in fact, things have gotten quite expensive for a lot of people. So anything additional like that, you'd like to have a cushion of a few bob. And it would have been, it is now fair, I think, that he comes clean to his wife about this. And
well, the only thing I'd say to him is, okay, that's going to be a huge row, I would imagine. But at least then everything's out in the open after that, so he'll be able to.
Yeah, but there'll be a picture, no sound for a while, all right. But
absolutely.
there could be a bribe then come into it, and there could be a little holiday for her with her friends or something, where he gets the break from her wearing out his ear.
I'll say nothing to that. All right, letter number 2. Dear Phil, I've always prided myself on raising my children to be kind, open-hearted and accepting of others, so I'm ashamed to admit the tangle I find myself in now. My only daughter has told me she's a lesbian, and instead of the steady support I thought I'd offer in a moment like that, I felt a jolt of disappointment I can't quite explain or justify. I know well enough that love is love and that I ought to practice what I've preached all these years, but I can't quiet the worry about what people around here will say, nor that nagging thought, unfair as it might be, that my girl has a flair for dramatics and might be seeking attention rather than speaking her truth. I don't like these thoughts one bit, yet they are there all of the same, and I'm left wondering how to square the mother I believed myself to be with the one that I seem to be now.
I think this is quite sad, actually, because I think people have a right to be whatever orientation that they choose. And I don't think it's something you can decide. She didn't decide she was lesbian. She is lesbian. And let that be okay. And let that be fine. And let the mother come to terms with it, because she's not going to change it. And to be disappointed because one of her children has turned out to be a lesbian or gay or whatever other term you want to use on it is really of no consequence whatsoever. I think people nowadays have every right to be whatever they want to be, and to just be proud of it, and to be out there, and to just not make excuses for someone else not being happy with what is for them a fact and a fact of life.
Yeah, it's interesting though that she's been liberal all of her life, or she thought she was liberal but then when it arrived on her own doorstep, she's worried about the neighbours.
Well, yeah, and also the fact that she was trying to figure out if the girl has a flair for dramatics, is she just seeking attention? If the girl is declaring herself to be lesbian or gay or whatever terminology you want to use, she absolutely is. And there's no denying that, you know, and I think it's a matter of coming to terms, or just, you know, trying to come out, well, maybe you're not really, maybe you just think you are. Maybe, you know, if you met a nice fella, you could be whatever. That's such rubbish, you know. If someone tells you how they are, that's how they are.
Sure, and, you know, I could understand if she came on and spoke about her concerns about maybe her daughter's future, that sort of thing, which would be quite normal to do. But when you worry about what the neighbours think, for God's sake, you know.
But you see, again, it's none of the neighbours' business either. And the other thing I would say to you, Frank, quite often people know very early on how someone is. And you know, I think the sooner that there's absolutely no judgment for how somebody declares themselves to be, the better it will be for everyone. Because I think once you start, you know, I can remember when we were very young and there was one person and it was always quite creepy, because, you know, he'd be kind of creepy around you, and we had to be very careful of them. But I remember going to my mother and saying, you know, ma'am, is that man safe, do you think? And she says, well, I wouldn't go out in a dark night with him. You know, so we've I think we're much more liberal nowadays, and you don't make judgments on people for what orientation they have, what sexual orientation they have, what the beliefs have, what the religion are. We're better off just accepting people for how they are. You don't have to live with them if you don't like how they are, but you don't have to judge them either.
Right. So, specifically to this mother, then you would say what, Phil?
I would say don't be worrying about your daughter. She's going to be absolutely fine. She has a particular orientation. It's going to make no difference. The best thing you can do is to be the best friends with your daughter.
All right. Good advice indeed. The third one, you were saying there, you found that sad. I find this particularly sad, this one. It says, Dear Phil, I've been off work for a good few months now after what the doctor called a nervous breakdown, though I've been calling it a proper falling to bits in my own head, and I'm due to go back to the classroom even though I don't feel anywhere near steady enough for it. The thought of walking back in through the school gates has me in a right tangle. Staff room chatter, students sizing me up, and me certain they'll all be whispering about what happened and what it says about me. I've been cleared to return, but I can't quite square that with how shaky I still feel inside, like I'm being sent back too soon in a coat that doesn't fit anymore. I've been listening to your advice while I've been off, and I suppose I'm hoping you might have some words for someone who knows they should be fine on paper, but isn't quite there in her bones yet. So this is obviously a teacher, Phil.
Yeah, and you know what? I really appreciate her letter, and I think she's being very honest. She had a bit of a breakdown. I think that she should discuss going back to school on an incremental basis, i.e. go in for a couple of days a week or go in for a couple of classes per day. I can guarantee this teacher that her students are not thinking anything about her, because number one, they're not going to be fully aware of why the teacher is off. People can be off for many, many reasons. Broken legs, broken limbs. They can be off for a breakdown or something like this. They can be off with, you know, depression. It happens to people. They go for treatment. They get better. There's always that fear when you're walking back in that there's going to be someone saying, they know about me now. I'm not complete. And in fact, this person is complete. She needs to, you know, to worry about staff room chatter. There's a whole system within schools now, I think, where there's a great deal of respect. There's a great deal of camaraderie between teachers and students as well. They have good relationships. So I think that she's probably overthinking in her head what the breakdown did for her and the nervousness about going back. But there certainly is a way where she can go back to school on an incremental basis. She does not have to go back and take a full 5 days in the school. She could go back on a couple of days per week and build up to it like that.
After a breakdown, as she describes it, it's hard to go back to any job, but teaching is so demanding nowadays. It must be particularly difficult, Phil.
It is, but there's mentors within the teaching profession as well. They have someone that they can talk to. They have supports within the teachers' organisations. They have help in relation to people that actually need help. I suppose it's important to say, Fran, that, you know, sometimes somebody that you look up to and is a great teacher, and suddenly you see a flaw in them, whereas that they have a bit of a breakdown. It's, you know what, it's nice to sort of acknowledge that and then say, that person can get well, because now there's a system in place where people can get well. And the teachers' organisations are extremely good at mentoring, and they're extremely good at being able to see where somebody might need a bit of support, additional support, maybe a bit of additional time off, and be supported through a difficult time for them. But it's not forever, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I was talking to Carl Clancy. I think you've been on a panel with him a number of times. Yeah. And he's written a book of poetry, but he spoke yesterday about his nervous breakdown and how just at a time in his life where, you know, he thought he had sorted things for the family and his career and blah, blah, blah. And then it was almost as if he allowed this to hit him in the way that it did. But it's always a very profound experience, that idea of a breakdown, Phil, isn't it?
Well, it is, Fran, because, I mean, everyone worries at times about sort of losing it and not being able to concentrate, not being able to go and do what you wanted to do, being intimidated or feeling that you haven't confidence. And to let a lack of confidence into you, it can be very hard to come back from it, and sometimes you really do need to go and talk to somebody. And I know it's difficult nowadays because it's very difficult to get a doctor's appointment, for instance. You could get in to see the advanced nurse practitioner, but you mightn't get the same one. And whilst they mean well, it can be very difficult because our systems are changing now all the time. You no longer have a right to a doctor. It's hard to get an appointment in a doctor's surgery. So if you're sick, you nearly need to go to the A&E to get a diagnosis and a referral. So it can be very difficult. But a nervous breakdown, whatever, or as this person was calling it, a proper falling to bits in their own head, I think take it easy going back. Go back for a period of time in the weeks and work around your classes in terms of how you can be helped.
Yeah, and the only positive I can take from it is people who've gone through that experience, when they come back, they're full of empathy, and they have a great feeling for people. So I would imagine, as a teacher, I mean, that would be a very valuable asset in a classroom, Phil.
Yeah, I think teachers have a lot of advantages because they have a lot of experience with different ranges, different groups of people, different backgrounds, different, they can be people that are from Ukraine, or they're from Poland, or they're from many different places around the world, or just like myself from Ballingarry, great. But it can be difficult, but these things can be dealt with. And particularly if there is a mentor within the school, which there nearly is in all of the schools now, Fran, where somebody is going to look out for you, it's very important that they avail of the services that are available to them and don't beat themselves up. This is a thing, and it does happen to people, and it does take a while to get over it, but you will come back, and just take things slowly and don't forget to breathe.
All right, Phil, pleasure as always, and I hope we meet up face to face soon. Lovely to talk to you, Phil.
Thanks, Fran. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye to you now. That's our agony aunt, Phil Prendergast. If you have an issue or a problem that you would like Phil to have a look at, all you have to do is email us, and it's tiptoday@tippfm.com. And if you put Dear Phil in the subject bar, we will know what you're at. It's 11:23. We're live from Nina today. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon, now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's.
Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Now, this evening, Cashel Library will host a special talk to honour the women who played a vital role in the fight for independence, marking the 110th anniversary of the Easter Rising. The event starts at 7 p.m. and joining me on the line now is Cashel librarian Maura Barrett. Good morning to you, Maura.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you today. You describe the role of women as being crucial to the fight for independence, Maura.
Yes, it's absolutely true that they were one of the, the most overlooked party or, group of people of the 1916 Rising. In fact, we now know from the pension records and other records that there were over 300 women who fought side by side as equal soldiers in the Rising with their counterparts. And they have largely been written out of history. The role that Common Lamont played was Trojan. Like they gathered intelligence, they cooked, they cleaned, they catered. They were trained in firearms. they made explosives,
Yes.
they carried dispatches, they stored weapons, they hid all of the men on the run.
They provided safe houses, didn't they?
Safe houses,
Yeah.
they tended to the wounded, they shared their plans, their worries, they kept the activists sane. Actually, in fact, even there is one account from W.T. Cosgrave who, in the Civil War, accused the women of goading the men into the fighting, that was continuing in the Civil War. So, they suffered harassment from Crown forces. They struggled with the results of martial law. They juggled meagre incomes. They just were stoic and silent through it all. Many of them were put into prison and suffered horribly. And then they were let down, because they were refused pensions and stuff. So, their story is a fascinating story.
Why do you think they were largely written out of history, even though I know we're trying to sort of play catch-up in the last few years? But why do you think they were largely ignored, Maura?
Well, it's interesting, it's interesting when you look, prior to, the 1916 Rising, there was what academics call the first wave of feminism was happening in Ireland. Women had begun to find the voice, and they had become involved in things like the Ladies' Land League and had been very effective, and they'd become involved in groups like In and a Hair, Mudgone McBride, and, they Common them on. So they had this belief in republicanism, in equality, in fraternity and freedom, and they bought into that ideal. Now, this was all before women had the right to vote. Can you imagine? Yeah. Like, women weren't given the right to vote until 1918, and only then, married women over the age of 30 were allowed to vote. So, and women weren't educated, they didn't have the right to take state exams. They didn't have a right to own property in their own right. There was huge discrimination going on, and there had been, they were, in sweatshops, they were, like places like Boland's Mill, Jacob's Factory, they were exploited. And there was an industrial movement going on in Dublin where they were beginning to strike, and you had the lockouts, and they were demanding better paying conditions. So there was a whole movement that had gathered. So there was this, and then at when World War I happened and all of Europe was crumbling, there was this kind of ideal that emerged that Ireland could break away from the yoke of the British Empire, and we could become a republic modelled on what France had done, and we had this bright new future where women, the proclamation, at the time, valued. It said Irish men and Irish women, and it was the only such proclamation that mentions women and that would value all of its citizens equally. So there was, and they were involved in the drafting of that, and it was this high ideal that they believed that they could happen, because the empire
and those high ideals were there, and then of course we created a state where we put women into mother and baby homes, and we put them into asylums, and we and we certainly didn't cherish the children equally either. So the what was in that proclamation, if we only followed that, we'd be living in a much better country.
Yeah, things went wrong. We had the War of Independence, then we had the Civil War, and of course it was pro-treaty, anti-treaty. Most of the women were, pro-treaty, and they believed in that ideal. But of course, they were anti-treaty, I beg your pardon. So, they believed in the ideal of the Republic, United Ireland, all of that. But it didn't go that way. We got a deal, and, we became sort of part of the Commonwealth for a while. We didn't become a republic until the 1940s. So some of them had to go along with the status quo, some of them couldn't, and they stepped outside of it. And, they were, what they were involved in essentially was guerrilla warfare, and it was hard going. And then, to the victor, the spoils, and I mean, there was what you'd a heap of misogyny around the place, Fran. And we all know, the famous De Valera one. Like De Valera didn't like. He was the only. He was head of the garrison in Boland's Mill, and he refused to have women in his garrison because he called them unmanageable revolutionaries. He was the only garrison that refused everyone. And when when Nurse Elizabeth Farrell, was delivered the surrender, she had to pick her way around Dublin City to tell all the garrisons that we were surrendering, and he was the only one who refused to take an order from her.
Isn't that incredible?
He introduced the marriage bar where women couldn't work in the civil service after they got married. So essentially, it confined all of there's no such thing as career progression for women, and all of the jobs in the civil servants went to men. And the
other side of the coin there would be more, in fairness to James Connolly, I mean, it seems to me that he was enlightened and he was forward thinking, and he believed in the whole notion of gender equality even at the time,
Yeah, James Connolly, he certainly had a fully formed ideal that hugely. He was a great socialist. He believed totally in equality. And the ironic thing about James Connolly is, he was second generation Irish. So he was of Irish stock. He was from Scotland.
Scottish, wasn't he? Yes.
And he had fought. He was part of the British forces that had come to Ireland prior. To that. He had been sent to Cork. There was a famous case where there was a rustling case where a man was hanged from Mayo in the wrong, and there was fighting, and he even shot people in Cork as part of the British soldiers, and he couldn't bear what was happening. Completely turned face and got involved in the trade union movements. I mean, himself and his family were supposed to go to South America, and then they got offered a role in Belfast with the trade unions. And Jim Larkin and Delia Larkin were hugely involved, and then they got involved in Dublin, and so there was a movement that began there. So the Irish Citizens Army, which he was the chief commandant of, invited women in and treated them the same and gave them equal responsibility across the board, and had huge time for them. And even as a famous where Countess Markovich said, James Connolly, he treated her like there was, he got to know me as a comrade, giving me any work that I could do, and quite ignoring the conventional attitude towards the work of women. So he
very, very forward thinking.
Any side that excluded women was bound for failure. That was his philosophy.
I understand that you will focus tonight primarily on women from the Cashel Tipperary connection. Could you give us some example? I don't want to take from your talk tonight, Maura, but could you give us some examples of some of the women maybe you'll be talking about?
Well, so the insurrection, which it was, quoted as, took part in Dublin mostly, and most of the people who took part were from Dublin. But there are people who have links into Tipperary. All of the Common Naman women would have been very involved in fundraising and all of that, carrying arms. People like Station Evan, who, she had a draper shop in Cashel. She was a dressmaker. She did, Pierce McCann, who was the general of the Tipperary Brigade. He, all of those would.
Was she related to Pierce McCann, Maura? Was she?
Was Station Evan? I don't know if she was related to Pierce McCann.
No. Sorry, I thought you said one of the ladies was called McCann. I beg your pardon. I just misheard you.
No, she was Station Evan. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And in fact, even Pierce McCann's fiance, Pierce McCann, died in Gloucester prison of the flu, and his fiance. I mean, she went on to become, Minister of Sweden. She was a minister in Austria and Switzerland in 1956.
Wow.
And, she was married to James McNeill. They lived in the Viceregal Lodge. She was the Governor General's wife of the Irish Free State. And when she had the temerity to ask her superiors why she was paid less for her role as an Irish minister than her male opposites, they didn't even dignify her with a reply, So, it's people like the Gifford sisters had links into Tipperary. They all went to school, or some of them went to school in the Ursuline Convent.
Did they? I didn't realise that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
this would be the famous Grace of Song and Story, of course. Yeah.
Their father was he was a solicitor in Bachelor's Walk in Dublin, but prior to that, because his family were Tipperary stock, and he had practiced as a solicitor in both Thurles and Tipperary town. So they, those links are there, and even Grace, who married Joseph Plunkett in prison, she, and she took, the opposite side, and she was put into prison, because she was anti-treaty, and she was put into prison during the Civil War, and she would have, sort of stayed with relatives in Tipperary after the rising, after her husband was.
It's interesting. There's so many links. I presume everybody is welcome along.
Yeah.
Do you need to register ahead of time tonight?
Just come along. We'd be delighted to have you. But if you want to ring, just so we know how many seats we need, 062 638 25. Just ring.
All right, very good indeed. Well, we wish you well for tonight. Most interesting conversation, Maura. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Maura Barrett there, who is librarian at the lovely Cashel Library, who is presenting that talk tonight. 1800 938 007. Patrick Pearse was no socialist. What's going on here, Fran? Says one of our listeners. But Fran, it says, when you say we, I didn't put anyone into a mother and baby home, nor you. And where were these poor girls to go when their own families put them out? And also, Miss Barrett is incorrect in that the majority of Irish women in Common Amon opposed the treaty, and that is academically provable. That comes in from Frank, who's in Thurles today. Why did I use the word we? I'm not too sure. I think it's probably we as a country, because you point to it yourself, Frank, when you say that, families. And I remember Teresa Collins telling me about this, that, families driving young women to these mother and baby homes, and abandoning them there. And there's no doubt that the religious organisations were culpable for a lot of the cruelty and the awfulness as well. But families, they wanted to sweep the problem, as they saw it, under the carpet. And quite often the way to do that was to deliver them to the doors of these mother and baby homes. Anyway, let me take a break. Back in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, earlier on this morning, I was speaking to Liam about the attempt on Donald Trump's life, and we were making the point that the first court appearance, the man accused of opening fire outside of that White House Correspondents Association dinner, was charged with attempting to assassinate the president. He was 31 years of age. Well, he is 31 years of age, a teacher and an engineer indeed. And he believed that it was his duty to target Donald Trump's administration officials along with himself, according to a note that he left for his family members just before the attack. Well, regular contributor to the programme, Pat Lynch, joins me now. Pat, good morning to you.
Morning, Fran, and to your listeners.
And good to talk to you. You were listening to that chat with Liam. What are your thoughts around the third attempt indeed, on Donald Trump's life?
Now, what we all question, and even Liam questioned, and you even said it there, this security. The security around Donald Trump is unbelievable. So for something like that to happen, I'm amazed that there's not something else behind this. So it's a very complex situation, and I suppose he being the most powerful man there in the world with the economy he's running with America, there has to be massive security. So I am very surprised that somebody got to that level to actually to get into even that building.
So what are your thoughts then?
My thoughts is, as we all know, and I've even asked this question: what's Donald Trump's strategy? He goes in so many directions. We don't actually know what his strategy at times, and this is the basis he works on. And part of that is he doesn't want to have a clear strategy that somebody can interfere with that. So he's jumping this way and that way. So even this situation now, there's nothing clear about it, and there's you can't figure out the day-to-day running of any modern-day politics is. People are perceived to be one thing, but actually there's an awful lot more going on. So this whole situation, you wonder, is there internal? You wonder what is going on. But for somebody to get to that level, I am very, very surprised at that happened. So I don't know with Donald Trump. I know with the war and the pain and suffering that he has caused right across the world to every man, woman and child, I imagine his life is in danger and there's massive security around him. So this is why I question how somebody actually got to that level of getting that near.
I'm not sure how many.
And even that shot that was taken on his ear. The security around that, there's no way you'd actually get into any particular point to be able to take that shot. So the whole lot...
This is the one now in Pennsylvania, Pat, is it? This was the one at the rally you're talking about. Yeah. What you're saying? You're saying a sniper wouldn't be able to get in place if right were right. Is that what you're saying?
No, they'd have all the buildings with months scrutinised, and they'd know every man, woman, and child in every one of them buildings, and there'd be massive security on anything that's in that type of range. They would have all that intelligence from the military and everything on the range with certain weapons and different things, and they'd have all that covered. So that type of scrutiny, and that's what's needed, with a man of his thing and what's going on within the world.
As I said earlier on, I mean, when Biden was here and previous presidents, the security is unbelievable, and weeks ahead of time there's sort of meetings with the Gardaí, and there's these special security guys here on the ground for weeks ahead of time, and the manholes are all welded, and you're right, and that's an incredible level of security, but that was very lacking in the Hilton Hotel.
Yeah, and whatever you'd see within Ireland, that'd be 10 times over in America, because there is all this extreme. We don't have the extremes as much here, and that's what was something extreme there that happened. That's one of these there. Thankfully, we don't have that level of them here, but I'd imagine America, it's massive. So that security would have to be there. But as I said, I often try and look at the strategy of Trump and where is this all going to end, or what is he on? I know he wants to make America wonderful again, and he's on about oil and grabbing oil, but there's an awful lot more to this, and I am at my best trying to figure out the strategy. But the way Trump will go on a day-to-day, he'll tell you one thing today and another thing tomorrow, so there's no clear strategy for anybody to actually work with. So this is not straightforward, this assassination or attempted. There's something more in this, but you or me wouldn't ever be able to figure it out. That's just the way he works.
Yeah, many people are making the point, has there ever been a president with so many close attempts on his life? It's been
Well, you see, what we had with Biden, as you saw beforehand, we had a guy doing very little. This guy gets stuck in and he rubs up certain people, and he's not afraid to go. That's the kind of guy he is. So he will attract that type of attention. Because if you're this nice guy showing up at all these functions day in, day out, you'll blend along with it and there'll be no threat. But as we know from Trump, and even with these wars, he's not that type of guy, and that type of guy will attract that type of attention.
And Pat, I'm not quite certain. Do you admire him or do you loathe him?
I admire a guy that's willing to do it, but like, as I said, I'd admire a guy that's set out day one, as any politician, even politicians in Ireland, who was setting out that we want to make America wonderful again. And I went along with these tariffs and all this, and he was basically trying to get in money, because an awful lot of people don't realise the amount of debt that America is in. So he had a job to do, and the tariffs were part of this. Now, I believe the war and what he done afterwards is he figured out, especially with Canada's reaction, that these tariffs weren't working. I need to go in tougher. So this is a typical businessman. He'll come up with something, and if that's not working, he'll change it. But unfortunately, where I don't admire him is that this is having an effect on every man, woman and child, and war shouldn't have that effect, that every single person is being impacted with this. And we saw with the protests in Ireland that people were pushed to the pin of their collar with fuel prices. We see it with home heating oil, and we see this shouldn't have this impact on every man, woman and child.
And just
so
finally,
I don't admire him for that.
Finally and briefly, if you would, this notion that within 2 hours of an attempt on his life, he's back hosting a press conference again in the White House, and almost shrugging off what happened. I mean, what does that say to you? Is that about resilience?
Well, it shows me the type of businessman, and you'll have this very much at high-level business. You'll have this guy shoving his chest out again, the big hard man, and there's nothing going to be in my way. And if you think you're having an impact on me, have another thought. So this is a typical high-level businessman that's there. That's the type of guys they are. They're seen nothing is in their way, and whatever's in their way, they'll figure ways of getting around it, and that's basically him again. As I said, business-wise, businessman, stuff he's doing to make America well, I'll go along with that, but I'm not going along with this thing with war, and any type of war, or whoever brings it about, is totally wrong, and it's something I don't admire somebody for.
All right. Thanks for your time this morning, Pat. Thank you and good morning to you. Leanne is with me. Good morning to you, Leanne.
Good morning, Fran.
You're going to talk to us about a very serious subject indeed, euthanasia and the ethics of ending one's own life. Now, there's been a particular case that has made the newspapers over the last while.
Yeah, the story of Wendy Duffy's story has made headlines all over the world at the moment. It's very sad. So it was a 56-year-old British woman, and she travelled to Switzerland last week to end her life after her son's death. So it cost her $13,500 to go to Switzerland and have this procedure done. And her son Marcus, he had died at 23 after choking on a tomato. And after 9 months of grieving, she attempted suicide and was unsuccessful. So she told media that she wanted her spirit to be free because she believes no medication or therapy can heal what she's going through. So ahead of going to Switzerland, she was going to call her family and say goodbye and express her unhappiness and desire to die. And before she headed off, she chose her death outfit, so what she'd wear for the treatment, and requested music by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars at the time.
I mean, it is so desperately, desperately sad, isn't it? But I mean, I thought there was rules and regulations around the euthanasia, even in Switzerland.
No, they've loosened up since the 2010s. So now if someone like this, they say they have a very strong mental health issue, or they have something, some kind of disability that's affecting their life, they can go and do this. And once they're able to get permission from the group to attend and to go over, and the interesting thing about her story was that physically she was fine. Physically she was healthy. She was only 56, but she made this decision based on grief for her son.
Yes, they're just incredible. Now, it follows another case that has some similarities.
Oh, yeah, this one is heartbreaking. I remember when it came out at the time, it was Noella Castello. So she was a 25-year-old woman, and she was left paralysed after a suicide attempt. And it was reported in the media at the time that she was after being brutally sexually assaulted. She was 25, but her father didn't want her to go through with this. So it went to court for 18 months. And in the end, it was accepted she could be euthanized. So in Spanish law, it was enacted in 2021 and they improved 426 requests that year alone, but hers was the first ever one to go to court. And the saddest thing was she requested to be alone with the doctor during the procedure, so she didn't have family or anyone with her at the time.
I mean, as I say, desperately sad. Will you tell me about the Canadian man as well? A young man.
Yeah, he was a 26-year-old man from Canada and he had type 1 diabetes and mental health struggles. And he was not terminally ill, but decided this was also the route he wanted to go down. Now, his parents have come out and said they believe doctors coached him to meet criteria for track 2. So in Canada, that is patients who are not terminally ill or their death's not imminent. So he could have survived and
that's
could
called
have lived.
track 2, is
Track
it?
2, yeah. So when it's not something where you're on hospice or you're palliative or you're going to die because of a medical condition in the near future.
His parents didn't even know about his death, I understand, until it had happened.
They only found out after he made this decision and was euthanized. And they also said that the medical records they got back after didn't match him or what was actually going on in his life at the time.
But I mean, this notion that if somebody is isolated or lonely or struggling a little, that they can make that decision, I can't go along with that.
And that's the toughest thing, because if you even look at Canada, in 2021, they expanded to allow non-terminal people to make the decision to be euthanized. And since then, deaths have surged over 16,000 annually. So that's 16,000 people who were not terminally ill and made this decision.
So based on what? On even loneliness?
Yeah, because 23% of Canadians have said they're isolated and lonely, and about 50% felt like a burden to others. But if you look at it, that could be a universal feeling. It depends on where you live, the weather, your routine, what job you're in, your family circumstances.
But it may well be just for a period of time.
Exactly. And I think anyone who's gone through severe mental health issues always say there's the good times and there's the bad times.
Sure.
And when it's good, it's really good. And when it's bad, it's really bad. But where the danger comes is now with this decision to open the boundaries and to allow people who are not terminally ill to make that decision to go through with this. And it's not a decision where you're taking a new medication or you might need to go into a psychiatric unit for a while. It's a decision to end your life and there's no coming back from that. And we can't talk to anyone if they have regrets about this to try and influence others from doing it because they've already passed away.
Yeah. What do you? Did you put this up on social media? You did?
Yeah, a lot of people said it's murky waters. It's a topic they find very, very difficult to comment on because that idea of your life, your body, your choice, and where do we draw the line to that? But if you look at it, in Ireland, if you assist in a suicide, you're looking at 14 years prison time for helping someone commit suicide. So it's considered a crime in Ireland. I know other countries have moved towards considering the boundaries of a legislation. Spain and Canada have obviously made the decision to allow non-terminal people. But it's that decision that starts out for terminal patients and then over time. Like I know there was a lady a couple of years ago, a young lady with bipolar who decided to make this decision. So on the family and also that idea, it's the question in their mind. I think families can come to terms with it if they know a patient's terminal or palliative because they don't want to see them have to go through the pain. But looking at what the family said, it's that idea that they could have lived. They could have succeeded.
Yeah, I know that MPs have rejected legalising assisted dying in Scotland, but a separate bill I know is being considered in England and Wales. You're a spiritual person. Where do you stand on this?
I think it's a very, very difficult one. I will go along with that idea online that if someone is suffering and they're going to pass away anyway, assisted dying, and that idea of being able to take some of the pain away and allow them the opportunity to go with dignity, I understand that completely. But when I see young people like 25, 26, 56, people that have their whole lives ahead of them still and so much to do, it wouldn't be something I would think anyone should go through. I think there's so many alternatives and everyone goes through bad times and you don't always see a way out.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you're 25 and you have 70 to 80 years of life left, in those 70 to 80 years, there's going to be some positivity.
And in the case of that British mother, Wendy Duffy, I mean, losing her son must have been catastrophic for her. I mean, I can't imagine what she went through with that. But then to choose to take her own life because, it was so
And she's experienced what it's like to lose someone close to her, and that pain has been overwhelming. So it's almost like a domino effect. How are the rest of her family or her friends going to be able to deal with this decision now that she has chosen, and she chose herself to leave?
It's incredible. So you're putting it out there. You'd like to hear how people feel about this, wouldn't you? You'd like to.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that it's very hard to talk about, because obviously people make decisions and you don't want to be saying, oh, their decision is wrong. But we want to have a conversation around, do you think there should be boundaries? Should it only be for people that are terminal? Do you think allowing it for people with mental health issues is a good idea? Because even in court, they have to determine when you're in a legal battle if you're competent to make a decision and if your mental health issues are going to impede on them. So are you really in the right mind to make a decision this permanent?
All right, so we will talk to people about over the next few days as well. Leanne, thanks very much indeed for that. That's it for me. Leanne produced. Stephen has the Time Tunnel on the Lunchtime Show, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.